He was just an old man in the rain, struggling with groceries, and she almost walked right past him. But something made her stop. She didn't know his name, didn't know his past, and she certainly didn't know that her one small act of kindness would lead to a public honor from the U.S. Army weeks later. This is the story of how seeing one person can change everything. It was the kind of afternoon that made folks linger indoors. The rain had rolled in, slow and steady, like an old friend returning without warning. The skies were gray, heavy with memory, and Main Street was quiet, except for the soft slap of raindrops against the pavement. Maggie stood behind the counter of her mother's bakery, watching the droplets race down the front window. 28, gentle-eyed, with flour still on her sleeves from the morning rush. She wasn't in a hurry. Not today. That afternoon was meant to be ordinary. But in small towns like hers, it's the ordinary days that hold the most extraordinary beginnings. Her mother, Elaine, called from the back, voice muffled through the hum of the ovens. "Mags, we're out of brown sugar. Think you can make a quick run?" Maggie grabbed her raincoat, tucked a note of errands into her pocket, and stepped into the drizzle. The parking lot outside the grocery store was mostly empty. Most folks had done their shopping early, before the rain settled in. Maggie moved quickly, pulling her hood up, weaving between carts and puddles. That's when she saw him. An old man, mid to late 70s. By her guess, dressed in a heavy coat, a bit too big for his frame. He was trying to lift a bag of dog food into the trunk of his car, struggling. The kind of struggle you almost overlook. Almost. He didn't ask for help. He didn't even look around. There was something quiet in him. The kind of quiet that carries history. Maggie felt it before she understood it. She walked over. "Sir, would you like a hand?" she asked, soft and polite. He turned. Pale blue eyes, sharp despite the age in his face. For a moment, he just stared, like the offer confused him. Then he nodded. Once. "Thank you, young lady," he said, his voice gravelly but kind. Together, they lifted the heavy bag and tucked it safely into the trunk. She noticed his hands scarred, steady, a little slow but firm. There was a wedding band, old and worn. "Your pup's gonna eat well tonight," she smiled. A faint chuckle. He always does. He reached for another bag, but Maggie stopped him gently. "Let me," she said. A few more items. Some small talk about the rain. And soon, everything was loaded. He closed the trunk slowly, like it meant something. She stepped back, ready to wish him a good day. But he didn't leave. He looked at her, eyes studying her like he was memorizing something more than her face. Then he said, quietly, "You remind me of someone. Someone I loved a very long time ago." Maggie didn't know what to say. She smiled, soft and a little unsure. She had that same look in her eyes. He continued, like she saw people, really saw them. Not everyone does that anymore. He paused. Then came the words Maggie would remember for the rest of her life. "Your kindness today might be bigger than you know." And with that, he tipped his hat. Yes, he was wearing one of those old felt hats you don't see much anymore, and got into his car. She stood there as he drove away, taillights disappearing into the mist. Rain fell in gentle curtains around her. She blinked and smiled to herself, thinking how strange it was to feel so full from such a small moment. She didn't even know his name. Didn't know that he was a decorated war hero. Didn't know that he hadn't spoken to anyone in town for months. Didn't know that she had just changed the course of more lives than she could count. But that afternoon, all she knew was this. She had helped someone. And sometimes, that's where miracles begin. The days that followed were quiet, almost forgettable. Maggie returned to her routines, baking at sunrise, chatting with locals, and curling up with a book each night beneath her favorite old quilt. But the image of the old man lingered. His words echoed in moments she didn't expect, while folding napkins, sweeping flour, or listening to the rain tap against her bedroom window. "Your kindness today might be bigger than you know." She tried brushing it off. Maybe he was just being sweet, lonely even, but a feeling kept tugging at her. A question that wouldn't go away. Who was he? One morning, while wiping down the bakery counter, she turned to her mother. "Do you remember a tall, older man, gray coat, soft-spoken? He shops at Carson's Market, drives an old Buick. I think." Elaine paused, thoughtful. "Doesn't sound familiar, but your aunt might know. She volunteers at the VFW every week." That afternoon, Maggie paid her aunt a visit. Over steaming cups of tea, they flipped through an old photo album from the town's Memorial Day parades. And then a face. It was him, standing ramrod straight in an old military uniform. The caption read, "Staff Sergeant Howard Ellis, Korean War veteran, Bronze Star." Maggie leaned closer. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the man I helped." Her aunt nodded slowly, her voice gentle. "Howard doesn't talk to many folks. Lost his wife about 5 years back. Ever since then, he's kept to himself." Maggie sat back, heart stirring. So, he was a veteran, a hero, even. And he'd been walking through their little town, unseen by most. She couldn't stop thinking about how he'd looked at her, like she reminded him of someone. That night, Maggie pulled out an old notebook and wrote his name at the top, Howard Ellis. She didn't know why. Maybe to remember, maybe to understand. All she knew was that something had shifted. It wasn't just about helping an old man with groceries anymore. It was about listening to a whisper from the past and deciding not to let it fade. A week later, Maggie found herself standing outside the town's VFW hall. She wasn't sure what she was doing there, just that something had pulled her to this place. Something unseen, but real. Inside, the scent of old wood and coffee hung in the air. Flags lined the walls. Photos of men and women in uniform, some young, some old, all with eyes full of purpose, watched her as she stepped inside. An older man behind the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Howard Ellis," she said, her voice low but steady. "I helped him with his groceries last week. I wanted to check in on him." The man's face softened. "Howard. Huh. Haven't heard anyone ask after him in a while." He paused, then nodded toward the back room. "He plays chess with Ray every Thursday. If he's here, that's where he'll be." She thanked him and walked toward the back. And there he was, seated by the window, a soft light framing his silver hair. He wasn't playing chess, just staring out at the lawn, lost in thought. There was a quiet dignity in the way he sat. She approached slowly. "Mr. Ellis." He turned, and when he saw her, something in his face lit up surprise, then recognition, then something softer. "You came," he said, almost to himself. Maggie smiled. "I hope that's okay." He nodded. "Sit, if you like." She did. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Then he spoke. "My wife used to come here every Thursday too. She'd bring cookies for the boys, even the ones who pretended they didn't like sweets." Maggie chuckled. "She sounds like someone I would have liked." He looked at her then, eyes moist. "You remind me so much of her. Not just the kindness, the light, the stillness." She didn't know what to say. So he told her more. About the war. About the letters they wrote. About the day he came home and saw her on the porch in her yellow dress. And then he said something that stayed with her for days. "Sometimes, when the world forgets you, all it takes is one person to make you feel remembered." They met again the next Thursday, and the one after that. Soon, Maggie started bringing muffins, then books, then other small kindnesses that bloomed into something larger than either of them expected. And somewhere between those Thursdays and quiet stories, the town began to remember too. Because kindness, when planted, has a way of growing roots, even in places you least expect, even in people you barely know, even in hearts that have waited too long. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Maggie found the letter. The bakery had closed early the night before storm warnings had rolled through town, and Elaine insisted everyone head home before the rain set in. So Maggie came in early, enjoying the stillness of the empty kitchen, the smell of cinnamon lingering in the air. She was dusting the counter near the window when she noticed it. A plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just her name, written in neat, old-fashioned handwriting. Miss Maggie Parker. She turned it over once, twice, then carefully opened it. Inside was a folded piece of stationery, soft, cream-colored, the kind people used to write on when letters were meant to last. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded it. And there it was, a letter from Howard Ellis. Dear Maggie, it began. I hope this letter finds you well, though I suspect it will, seeing as how you always seem to carry well-being wherever you go. I'm not a man who writes much anymore. My handwriting's not what it used to be, and my thoughts don't always line up in straight rows. But I needed to say something, and I wanted it written, because some words deserve to last. She blinked back the sting of tears. Her breath caught in her throat. She kept reading. The day you helped me with those groceries. I was having what my late wife used to call a quiet ache kind of day. The kind where everything you've ever loved feels far away, and the silence weighs heavier than it should. I didn't expect kindness. Not anymore. Not from a stranger. But you didn't see a stranger, did you? You saw a person. And that meant more than you'll ever know. Maggie sat down on the stool by the front counter, her hand covering her mouth. The letter continued. There's something else I need you to know. A few days ago, I spoke to someone I haven't spoken to in decades. His name is Colonel Jacob Winters, retired now. But once my commanding officer, I called him because I wanted to tell someone that the world still has people worth saluting. I told him about you, about your kindness, about the way you reminded me of why we served, why we sacrificed. He listened, and when I finished, there was a long pause. Then he said, Howard, that's the kind of story the world needs to hear again. So he made some calls. Maggie leaned forward, heart pounding, eyes wide. This coming Thursday, there's going to be a small ceremony at the town square. They told me they wanted to honor a veteran. But I told them no. I said, if we're honoring anyone, it's the girl with flower on her sleeves and kindness in her eyes. Maggie, they're honoring you. Her eyes filled with tears. They're not just honoring what you did for me. They're honoring what you reminded all of us, that kindness is not small, that it echoes, that it matters more than most people realize. I'll be there, of course, front row. I may not wear my uniform, but I'll be proud just the same. Yours in gratitude and friendship. Howard Ellis. She sat in stunned silence. The letter rested in her lap like something sacred. She looked out the window, where the rain had started again, falling gently over the empty street, just like the day they met. A soft smile curved her lips. She didn't know what the ceremony would be like, didn't know who would show up, or what words would be spoken. But she knew this. Kindness. The kind that comes without expectation, without fanfare. It had a way of circling back. And sometimes, it brought the world with it. Thursday morning arrived crisp and clear, as if the skies themselves wanted to join the celebration. The town square was alive with a quiet buzz. Flowers were arranged along the steps. Flags fluttered gently in the breeze, and a modest crowd gathered. Folding chairs lined up beneath a pale blue canopy. Maggie stood near the back, her heart pounding like a drumbeat in her chest. She'd never imagined a day like this. A day where strangers and neighbors alike would come together not to honor a hero in uniform, but to honor kindness. The ceremony began simply. The mayor, a warm-faced woman with a voice both strong and gentle, stepped up to the microphone. She spoke of community, of resilience, and of the small acts that stitch a town together like threads in a quilt. And then she told the story. She told the story of a quiet old man carrying heavy bags in the rain, of a young woman who stopped and offered a helping hand, of a moment, brief and unassuming, that grew into a legacy. Maggie felt a hand rest on her shoulder. She turned to see Howard Ellis standing nearby, his eyes bright, a small smile breaking through the lines of time etched on his face. He was wearing his uniform jacket, the medals pinned carefully to his chest. The crowd rose in applause. Some wiped tears, others nodded, deeply moved. Howard stepped forward to speak. His voice was steady, but full of feeling. "I've seen a lot in my life," he said. "Things that tested me, that challenged my heart and spirit. But today, I'm here to tell you something I learned from a simple act of kindness." He looked directly at Maggie. "Kindness," he said, "is the quiet hero in all of our stories. It's what gave me hope when I thought there was none left. And it's what brought us all together here today." Maggie's eyes welled with tears. She thought of the letter, the afternoons at the VFW, the quiet conversations, and the unspoken understanding that had grown between them. Then came the moment she hadn't expected. The mayor called her up to the podium. "Miss Maggie Parker," she said warmly, "your kindness reminded us all that every day we have the chance to be a hero in someone's story." Maggie stepped forward, hands trembling slightly. She looked out at the faces young, old, familiar, and new. She took a deep breath and spoke softly. "I didn't do anything special," she began, her voice catching. "I just saw someone who needed help. And I did what I hope we all try to do, be there for each other." She paused, letting the words settle. "But Howard showed me that kindness can be so much more. It can heal, it can connect, and it can change lives." The crowd listened, rapt. A local reporter asked Maggie afterward what she hoped others would take from the story. Her answer was simple: to look up from their busy days, to see the people around them, not just the faces, but the stories and the hearts. The ceremony ended with Howard and Maggie sharing a quiet handshake, a moment filled with unspoken gratitude. As the crowd dispersed, Maggie stayed a moment longer, watching the sun dip low behind the old courthouse. She thought about the journey, the chance meeting in the rain, the growing friendship, and now this beautiful acknowledgement. She smiled, knowing one thing for sure. Kindness wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a legacy, and it had only just begun. In the end, it wasn't the medals or the applause that changed lives. It was the quiet decision to stop and care. We never truly know the weight others carry until we offer to help lift it. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this: your smallest act of kindness may become the brightest moment in someone's darkest day. If this story touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment, or subscribe for more stories of unexpected kindness. Let's keep the goodness going together.